It's early 1901 and the war is going really badly for the Boers. And they have a council of war up in Pretoria, and they decide, they realize they've got to conclude a peace with the British, but they want the best peace possible. And one way to do that is by continuing the war, making things tough for the British, so that the British will be more inclined to make concessions. And they take a decision. They appoint Jan Smuts to head a commando to come all the way from the Transvaal through the Free State and to invade the Cape Colony, hopefully to raise the Cape Dutch again, the Cape rebels, the Schoemans of the world, to join them and fight against the British. So Smuts set off with 350 men. Among them was his brother-in-law, Totti Kröcher. There was Denise Reitz, who wrote the book, later a book of his experiences called Commando, and who later became a member of Parliament. And there was Smuts, as his adjutant, he had a man named Johannes Neethling, who was very keen, a Transvaaler who was very keen to join the expedition because his wife was in Cape Town nursing her sick mother, and Neethling wanted to be in the Cape when peace was declared as a result of Smuts' incursion, so that he could be close to them, he could be reunited quickly with them. Also, Neethling was older than Smuts, and the Krijgsraad, the War Council, thought that Neethling would be a good restraining influence on Smuts' impetuosity, and also Smuts didn't have a great deal, he had zero military in the field experience. The commando fought its way through the Free State, various encounters with the British, came along the edge of the Sotho land, and they then had to fight off the Sothos who were shooting at them. And by the time they had reached the Orange River, its numbers were down by a third. On September the 7th, the afternoon of September 7th, they bivouacked on Waterval Farm, which is the Moordenaarspoort, and Waterval is the next one along. It's also a Schoeman farm, also a family of Dani. And several men, including Captain Martiens Adendorff and his brother Willem, came up here to see if there was a way through. The British knew they were coming. They'd been warned by what happened in the Free State, and the British had basically put a cordon right across here. They were waiting for Smuts to come. And they were looking for a way through the cordon, for a way through the mountains. So Adendorff and Willem came out to scout for a way through. And on the way, they would have ridden past the farmhouse down the bottom, past the Moordenaars farmhouse where old Mrs. Schoeman was. And what I'm going to read you now is an account dictated by Mrs. Emma Nordia when she was about 80 years old. And I'll explain later, you'll see what her connection with the whole story is. This is a translation of what she said for you.
Thank you.
She said, Captain Adendorff and a couple of men went up the poort, up the kloof, to reconnoitre, and they came back saying that the ridges were full of English. In other words, this ridge here. However, Smuts also wanted to go up the poort to see the heights above where the troops were, because he wanted to see how to attack them. Mr. D. Schoeman, Danke's great-grandfather, also warned General Smuts not to go up the poort, and showed him a footpath that would be safer somewhere else, but not anywhere but here. But Smuts did not want to take his advice. The Adendorffs, who had already scouted the vicinity, again warned Smuts that it would be impossible to storm the heights from below. I think Mrs. Nodi was getting a bit confused about what they were doing. She's talking about an attack. You know how stories get changed over the years. So she thinks Smuts wanted to attack the British from below. But really, from all the other sources, it was just they were looking for a way through. It wasn't about attacking the British. But Smuts still was, and they warned him that the hills were full of British, and Smuts was still determined to go ahead. Johannes Neethling proposed that they climb the koppie next to the farmhouse over there so that they could get a better view of what was going on here, a better view of the position. But Smuts said to Neethling that if he was scared, he could stay behind. You'll remember that Neethling was his adjutant, the older man, the more sensible man. Neethling turned to Smuts, and this is what Emma Nordia said. He said, Jannie, waar jy ook wil gaan, wherever you want to go, is ek al voor jou daar. I'm there already. At this point, General Smuts said something to Captain Adendorff, one of the scouts, that offended Adendorff deeply. Nobody else heard it. And Adendorff replied so that everybody could hear. He said, Adendorff was a Free Stater. He said, you Transvaalers need not think that us Free Staters can't go where you go. And he turned his white horse and he took the head of the line, followed by his brother, Willem, Neethling, and Smuts, last in the line. So they're coming up the kloof, and in fact at that time there were two locally raised corps. One was the Dordrecht District Volunteer Guard and the Woodhouse Border Rifles. They were camped on the farm Leeuwfontein, which is over there. Pickets along the top of the mountain reported the presence of Boers down there, and a detachment under Lieutenant Jackson was sent over to investigate. From the skyline, Jackson saw this party of 5 men riding up the kloof, and he and his men quickly hid their horses behind here, and they hurried across to here. And they took up position. If behind the bush, if you see under the overhang, there's actually a large flat rock blocking the entrance. They took up position behind the rock there. And Smuts and his companions rode up here.
Ja, binne, dit is nie, hier sou die voetpad gaan na agter gebeur. Die voetpad gaan hier. Toe hulle daar gekom, min of meer by die bakkie, jy sal my hoor in die storie, daar 2 slote, dit was nou hierdie een, en dan, ek praat van die kleiner sloot, kyk, is 100 jaar terug, toe was hierdie sloot nie gedoek.
100 years ago, this big donga here in front of you was not there.
So hulle praat van die klein sloot en die groot sloot. En hulle daar oor gekom, en hier is die voetpad. Voetpad gaan hier in.
So the footpath in those days, this donga wasn't this deep.
Hier gaan die voetpad uit.
And this was the path that Smuts and his men came.
En hulle moes in die daar waar daai bosse is, hy daar uitgegaan en hulle skryf, hulle het gesê, hulle moes die eerste een skiet want hy was amper uit die line of sight en Smuts was nog onder.
Hang on, Donnie. People write that they had to shoot at that stage because the first person in the 5 was almost out of line of sight and Smuts was at the back.
And that was the Adendorff that they killed, is the first one. They shot him dead. And then the others were roundabout from here to there. Smuts was last. Smuts was more or less behind that yellow bush. So that is how they... that Adendorff that was killed was first. And then his brother, then Neethling, and then Smuts.
So Willie Adendorff, so Captain Adendorff was shot dead on the spot, as Donnie says. His brother Willie was wounded in the arm and the leg. Neethling, Johannes Neethling, was shot in the leg, and Smuts's horse was shot under him, his horse Charlie. He also got 2 bullet holes in his hat. The horse the horse collapsed under Smuts. Smuts rolled off.
En daai sloot. Hulle sê hy het in hierdie vlaksloot ingerol. En toe skiet hulle so kwaai die stof so staan. Toe sien hulle nie, toe hardloop hy in daai onderste sloot. En toe kruip hy seker nou weg tot dit donker word.
So he rolled off into this donga and ran down the sloot, and they were shooting at him so much that there were puffs of dust following him all the way down, and eventually he reached the donga, the big donga at the bottom, and he carried on down the hill. Mr. Jackson, Lieutenant Jackson, afterwards told Mr. Schoeman, Donnie and I have a difference of opinion. Donnie thinks his great-grandfather was in jail, but the accounts all say that he was actually at the farm. Maar ons kan dit later uit.
Weet jy? Want hoekom was ouma Rood alleen? Ja. Hulle sou nie alleen gelos word daar nie.
Anyway, Mrs. Nordia says Mr. Jackson said afterwards that they stopped firing when Smuts rolled off the horse. They stopped firing briefly because they thought that Smuts had been shot in the head. Those 2 bullets through the head. When he saw, and this is Mrs. Nordia again, when he saw the man running, he opened fire again, but the dust was so bad they couldn't see him. General Smuts arrived at the farmhouse, Moordenaarspoort, full of mud and without a hat. After he had washed, he took a hat of old Mr. Schoeman and rode back some distance into the port to see where the others were. Johannes Neethling sought shelter behind a rock. The British didn't look for him afterwards. He sought shelter behind a rock. His horse had been killed, and in falling, it had kicked him on the shin. He also had the bullet wound above the knee. Young Adendorff, Willie Adendorff, the one who was wounded, said he was so close to the man who shot him that he would recognize that man anywhere that he saw him. He also sought shelter behind the rock with Neethling. So Smuts returned again later with somebody else, with Ben Boer, his deputy commander, and they looked again for everybody. The wind was blowing strongly, it was getting dark, they couldn't find Neethling, they couldn't find Adendorff, they went back. Smuts decided that they were either dead or had been taken prisoner, and he left the farm with his commando. Smuts decided they couldn't get through here. What he did was he went that direction and he tried again further on. That's a whole different story. They eventually crossed the cordon, got into the Cape, and carried on from there. Late that night, Willie Adendorff managed to drag himself down to the farmhouse, where troopers found him the next day. Lieutenant Jackson ordered Donnie's, according to our accounts, ordered Donnie's great-grandfather to go and fetch Neethling up here and to bury the dead Adendorff. A doctor came from Dordrecht and he ordered Donnie Schoeman to take the 2 wounded men into Dordrecht. Donnie Schoeman left his own account of the incident, at the end of which he says simply, I got a wagon and took them to the jail in town. That was the last time I saw them. The men were at least initially well looked after in the prison hospital, but both of them blood poisoning set in. And this is Mrs. Nordia again. The doctors who visited the prisoners were almost always under the influence of drink. 21 days after the arrival of the 2 prisoners in the prison hospital, Neethling's leg was amputated below the wound. 4 days later, Neethling died. Jan Adendorff's leg was amputated 2 months later, and he died half an hour later. They are buried alongside one another in the old graveyard in Dordrecht. And you will remember, those of you who were at the church yesterday, I pointed out those names on the memorial. The commando headed west. I've told you that. If you want to know what happened, you must read Rates' Commando. It was bitterly cold. There was sleet and snow. They'd come all the way down from the Transvaal. They had no equipment. Their shoes were in tatters. They were wearing mealie bags to try and keep warm. Their horses were dying from the cold. They would march through the night, and the next morning there would be men simply missing who had fallen down with hypothermia and who had died. It's absolutely appalling. The end of the war, found that Smuts went down. His father, they actually saw the lights of Port Elizabeth. They fought their way through the Cape, and they ended up in the Northern Cape, in the Concordia area, making life very difficult for the British. And it was there that Smuts eventually got a message. Officers came with a white flag of truce, and they said to Smuts, the Krijgsraad in Pretoria, the guys want you to come and take part in the peace negotiations. And Smuts went. And that was essentially the end of the war. But there are a couple of loose ends. Smuts's saddlebag. In his saddlebags, there were various papers and books, including a Bible and a copy of Xenophon's Anabasis, which is a story. I think he had it in Greek, if I remember. It's the story of Greek mercenaries in Persia in the umpteenth century, around the time of Darius or something like that. And whoever they were doing the mercenary work for died, so there was nobody to pay them. And they made their way back where all the fighting is going, all the American bombing now. They made their way back through Iraq, up through Turkey, back to Greece, fighting all the way. It's an amazing story. It must have been very inspiring for Smuts. His saddle, they were recovered by the Schoeman and eventually returned to Smuts' family. They are now in the Smuts Museum in Pretoria. Along with Smuts' saddle, which went by a slightly different route. One of the British guys, a policeman from Indwe, picked up the saddle. It went to Indwe, and for many years it was in the Moffat family. The kids used to use it for riding around on their horse. And only a few years ago, a decade or so ago, it went to the Smuts Museum. The other loose end is Emma Nordia. The reason she was able to tell the story in such detail is that she was Johannes Neethling's wife. The woman he had been hoping to be reunited with in Cape Town. He was looking after her sick mother. So the Nordia surname came from a second marriage. So Mrs. Nordia's story has a flavor of bitterness about it. Resentment towards Smuts and Smuts' obduracy and determination to go ahead despite all the warnings. But we must also remember that in later years Smuts was reviled by an awful lot of Afrikaners. They thought that he, by coming to an accommodation with the British, he had betrayed the Afrikaner cause. And there was, for years later, there was huge conflict between the SAPA, Smuts' SAPA South African Party and the Nats. So I think that probably also fed into it. I very much doubt that Mrs. Nordia ever voted for Smuts' party.
But even we, Ben, my family never liked snuff. He was a liar. My grandfather, my father was better.
On the way down here, either on the way to Moordenaarspoort or on the way back, Smuts stopped at a farm called Middelplaats, and the story handed down by the Middelplaats family. Mrs. Werner was there, and Smuts came in and she offered him coffee. He said, yes, please. She gave him coffee. She said afterwards, years afterwards, she said, if she had known what Smuts was going to turn out like, she would have put caustic soda in.